Chair recognizing Mr. Bosley of North Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say I'll be brief. I will be as brief as I can be.
Chair would ask the members to please take their seats and pay due attention to the gentleman at the microphone. Mr. Bosley of North Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let me take the opportunity, I guess, to congratulate you on this bill. I can count, but I wanted to get up and explain why I am not going to vote with you, Mr. Speaker, even though I respect your reasons for voting the way that you are and for crafting this bill the way that you did. Mr. Speaker, I started in 1996. I was appointed as the chairman of the Government Regulations Committee. And I was appointed for two reasons by then new Speaker Finneran. He wanted me to go up and take a look at electricity restructuring and whether or not we could do casinos in Massachusetts. And I have looked at this many, many times since then, and we have debated this about 7 or 8 times in this chamber. And it's felt a little funny, you know, when you're leaving, it's everything you do, it's the last time you debate anything, or it's the last time you speak on things. It's the last time I'm going to speak on gambling. I kind of hope to keep my record intact, but unfortunately, probably not. Mr. Speaker, every time that we have tried to do a debate on this, I've always tried to take a look at this, as well as other things in this chamber, from the term of short-term and long-term. What short-term benefits or what short-term things happen that are going to help us or hurt us, and what long-term benefits we get, or what long-term costs we have. And I've tried to look at both, not just because it's our job to look at things for every 2 years and it's our job to budget every year. I have a daughter graduating from college this year. We want to hand this off to her and her generation. So I always take a look at the long-term effects of everything that we do. We've had 2 days of debate here, and I have to say that this last debate was probably, I think, the best debate that we had. It was a great exchange of information, exchange of ideas, exchange of passion. It was nice to see Cleon fired up. We've had 2 days of debate over the minutiae of amendments, but we've had no debates at all on the assumptions of the bill. No challenges to job figures, revenues, estimates on projections. We've kind of thrown up our hands and we accept the numbers that we've rejected for years. And they're the same numbers. The Spectrum report, every of these reports that has been done has been a benefit analysis of this. So I appreciate the need for economic activity, but I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about several different points that I would just like to point out as reasons that I'm not voting for this bill. The first is economic panacea, because if you take a look at Rhode Island or New York or New Jersey or Connecticut, they have several things in common. The first thing they have in common is that they all have greatly expanded gambling over the last couple of decades. The second thing they have in common is they have a higher income tax and a higher property tax than we do. And until last year, they all had a higher sales tax than we had. So it hasn't been the economic panacea that they've been looking for. So are casinos successful? Well, it depends on your view. The last time we debated here in this chamber, almost 2 years ago, Foxwood was trying to restructure their debt. Three Rivers was trying to get Rhode Island to bail them out. Greektown Casino in Detroit was $777 million in debt and was declaring bankruptcy. New York was promised $400 a day per machine, and they actually got between $112 and $191 a day per machine. Las Vegas, Tropicana was in bankruptcy. MGM Mirage was $13 million in debt, looking to restructure. Riviera Holding, Trump, and Harrah's were all either in bankruptcy or they were in serious trouble. This does not have to be our economic future, I don't believe. Now, the Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Samuelson, in his book, interestingly, called On Economics, said that gambling is the worst form of investment that you can make as economic policy. Bill Eddington, who is a professor in Las Vegas, has testified in Pennsylvania that if you're going to do this, you do this for entertainment purposes and not economic development purposes, because it's lousy economic policy. Former Governor Kenny Gunn from Nevada said in his State of the State speech about 7 years ago that it is a failed economic policy, even in Nevada. So we need to look at the plan. Will we recapture money from Connecticut? Of course we will. Some of it will come back. Not all will come back. But even using the chairman's figures, most of the money that we're relying on for revenue doesn't come from Connecticut. It comes from in-state. And it's probably money that we already spend here. So you have to ask yourself two questions. If the money's not coming from Connecticut, it's coming from here, where's it coming from, and how much does it cost to get that revenue? So I would suggest that part of this is money that's already spent in our economy, but you don't have to take my word for it. There was a Federal Reserve Bank of Boston study that was done that said up to 72% may already be spent in our economy. There was a case study in Missouri said $589 million came from 10 casinos that they studied. $503 million was attributed to new gambling money, but they found that $265 million of that was already spent in the Missouri economy. It was just diverted to the casinos. $49 million came from savings within banks in Missouri, and that's 62% of the total of new revenues that we're relying on if we were Missouri. And then when you consider that $90 million that was spent was taken away by casino owners out of state, that means that 80% of the money was not new revenue to the state of Missouri. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. Economics 101. Economics 101 would tell you that you try to diversify your economy. You try to make it as diverse as you possibly can. You want a lot of smaller businesses, a lot of diverse businesses. You don't want to rely on monolithic casinos or monolithic businesses. When Sprague Electric left North Adams with 3,000 jobs, we said we wanted 30 jobs 100 times or 300 jobs 10 times. You try to diversify. This does just the opposite, and it pulls everything towards one or two monolithic casinos. It's not recession-proof, as by that list that I gave you. It's not recession-proof. And those who now have tracks or casinos are going to find themselves in the same kind of recession track that we're all in. It is a matter of fact, there have been studies that have been done recently that indicate that it's going to take them longer to pull out of it because we have less and less discretionary spending. And it hurts our businesses. I've heard from the Colonial Theater in Pittsfield, from the Hanover Theater in Worcester, from the Lowell Auditorium, downtown Springfield, and so many other places that were rebuilt to give rebirth to our downtowns. And they're all worried about the effect of taking money and taking it out and putting it into those casinos rather than in the downtowns. Now, our solution to that in this bill is to give a certain percentage of the take from the casinos to those cultural facilities. Well, let's think about that for a second. They don't have the business that they did before, so we're going to take money from the business that took the business, and we're going to give them money, but we're still not putting people in their seats. We're still not participating in those cultural facilities and those cultural events and those things that make us Massachusetts and make us uniquely Massachusetts. So I think there are problems in this bill, and there are many unanswered questions, and there are unanswered questions in any bill on this, not because there are unanswered questions in this particular bill, because the gentleman from Haverhill worked extremely hard on this and is extremely knowledgeable, and I will admit that there are differences of opinion, and we can disagree without being disagreeable, and I think that the gentleman has done a great job in putting together a bill. I just don't think we should be doing this at all. Mr. Speaker, I've never been morally opposed to casinos. I just think they're lousy investments for the Commonwealth. I never said that if you put casinos up, people aren't going to go, because obviously they will go there and they will spend money. What I am saying is they're spending money that in the long run would be spent elsewhere. And I appreciate the fact that unions are worried about their members, but if we build these and stifle the rest of the economy, what are we going to do? Not me, because I'm leaving, but what are you going to do 5 years from now or 10 years from now when we don't have money for other things because we're putting it all into one or two casinos? If we impact the lottery, and most everyone thinks we will, as a matter of fact, we've had people up here just in the last debate on both sides of this issue who said we'll impact the lottery. How does that affect our local businesses that are lottery outlets? How does it impact lottery revenues? Now, there's estimates all over the place, and we did a regression analysis a few years ago, tried to do a Granger causality study, and you don't really need to know what that is, but it's a time study with different points. And we tried to do that a few years ago. And what we have is a mature lottery. Everything impacts that lottery. The price of gasoline goes up, the lottery's impacted. So the lottery is going to be impacted by this. And if we need the Racino dollars for local aid, but we lose lottery revenues, we aren't bringing in new dollars, and you can't count these as new dollars if they just substitute for the old. And by running the regression analysis, we've projected losses. And why is this important? Because it takes $3.15 spent in a casino to make up for $1 that we lose in the lottery. Let me say that again. It takes $3.15 in a casino. And why is that? Well, we get less from a slot machine than we do from a scratch ticket. Basically, that's basically what it is. So when we lose $1 on a scratch ticket, we have to spend more in a slot machine to get our piece of that back. So we have to be very careful about what we do and why we do it. Now, that's not the only cost. If you have a structural cost on the social side of gambling, it's not just the cost of compulsive gambling programs, but people who are eligible for state programs because they've impoverished themselves. They become eligible because they're lower income, and we pick up those people someplace. There's a cost to public safety, to increase law enforcement, court costs, infrastructure costs. There's a cost for a lottery, for a casino commission. Now, it costs us $60 to $70 million to run the lottery commission. It's going to cost us somewhere near that, I believe, to run the other. And then finally, there's the substitution effect in our economy. Now, if you add the cost side figures to the benefit side figures that we keep getting, you find this really is not a good economic plan. Mr. Speaker, I liken these debates to that soup that they used to have on TV. It's in there. Mitigation costs, it's in there. Social costs, it's in there. We say we attribute all the costs. We're going to cure it all with new revenues from casinos. It's in there. You want more money for manufacturing, it's in there. You want more money for local aid, it's in there. If you start to add all of these up, there's not enough to pay for that bill. So what do? Well, what they did in Connecticut was they continually expanded gambling to get more revenue, or their diminished marginal utility of that last dollar. Not every dollar is the same. And as you spend more and more dollars, you get less and less economic power out of those dollars. You siphon more out of the rest of the economy. And when I was a kid in Connecticut, they had all these insurance companies. They had Sikorsky Aircraft, Bell Helicopter, Waterbury Buckle, GE, GTE, you name it. They had business all over the place. They have none of these businesses today. They rely more and more on those casinos, and it becomes the tail that wags the dog. Now, is this an anomaly? Well, Pennsylvania wanted just slot machines. They didn't want casinos. They wanted slot machines. Now they're looking at casinos because the slot machines haven't brought in enough revenue. As I said, New York was told $400 a day per machine. New York found they didn't get it. And what was the solution? The gambling operator said, you have to come back for more slot machines. So they've gone back for more of those. We've debated protections here over the last couple of days. Well, I went to Joliet, Illinois when I first started studying this because they had the Princess Casino out there. It was a riverboat. You had to float down the river so that you could minimize the amount of people that were on that riverboat. You had to have a limit of $500 a day, and there was no ATM on that machine, on that riverboat. And now there's an ATM, there's no limit, they now dock, they don't go out at all anymore. Because once you're there, it's voracious. And you continue to get hooked on more revenues. Now, you don't have to go outside Massachusetts to understand this. You can look at this bill because you all put in amendments to expand gambling before we even have it, to put them in fraternal organizations, to put 750 at Logan Airport, to put an additional casino up. We haven't even had it yet, and we debated whether or not we should expand it. Or we can take a look at the lottery. We started off in 1974 with that little green ticket. Little green ticket, it was going to be a daily number 6 days a week. And it was going to pay for education in this state. And they had tremendous debates back then on that. Passed it. Then they found, well, they need more. Didn't really fund education. So they did a weekly drawing, Megabucks. And that worked, so they did a weekly drawing, Mass Millions. And then they did Mass Cash. And then they made these biweekly, and they expanded the game to the 7th day to Sunday. And at any one time, while all the rest of this is going on, we have 35 scratch tickets out there. And then we added the big game. Then we added Powerball. And we have Keno. Worst vote I ever took in this chamber. I've taken some bad votes. Keno fires off 4 minutes. Every 4 minutes you can bet. And it's not $20. Somebody says $20. That's a top bet. You can get in a lot of bets in that time. Every 4 minutes we fire off. And you know what? We make double with our lottery what they make with the 2 best casinos in the world in Connecticut. We double their revenues. How much more are we going to get out of this? And we haven't been able to control it, and we're still looking for more. Finally, this bill ignores the possibilities of Native American casinos. Now, people have pointed out that, I think the gentleman from Haverhill pointed out that the U.S. Supreme Court decision, which disallows land in trust for tribes recognized after 1934, prohibits them from putting land in trust right now. And that's absolutely true, and we've argued this and we've debated this over the years. But almost everyone in Washington is the opinion that they're going to change that, because it's inherent, it's patently unfair. If you're a tribe that's recognized after 1934, you should have the same rights. I don't think they should build casinos, but they should have the same rights. So it will be overturned, and in my humble opinion, when that is overturned, if we pass this bill, they will be in a very strong position and will not have to negotiate a compact, but can dictate the terms for that compact. And I think that's important for a couple of different reasons, not the least of which is that if you have people bidding on your casinos, these 2 casinos that we're going to build, if you have people bidding on it, and I'm a betting man, I am going to...
What purpose does the gentleman rise? Gentleman yield.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
And I apologize to the Dean. I am about 2 minutes away from finishing.
Mr. Bosley of North Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you're going to go out for a bid on casinos, and there's a possibility to get a casino license without a bid, it lowers your bid price. So you really need to do something about the compact. But anyway, you get the idea. And I haven't even touched on permanent versus short-term jobs, on the effective host communities. And there are so many other issues that we've done over the years. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to close by congratulating you. I think you have the votes for this. I think that you've done a nice job at selling your perspective, and I appreciate the fact that we have a difference of opinion, but we're not disagreeable. The state of this economy should not be an excuse. It should be a reason for doing economic development. I'm voting against this because I feel it is the wrong policy. I think there are long-term effects. And then finally, let me just say that this is the last time that I'm going to get up and debate this, and it's the last time for the Dean of the House, and it's the last time from the gentleman from South Boston who've been on the opposite sides of this. And I'll tell you, it has been a real thrill to be able to sit here and debate this with these gentlemen over the years. And so I want to thank them for their kindnesses, for their intellect, and for their maybe on the opposite side, but we've always been very friendly. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I hope this bill is not passed to be endorsed.